The Victorian mansion loomed before Thomas Bennett like a sleeping giant, its weathered facade telling stories of decades past. At 32, inheriting his eccentric Aunt Eleanor's home hadn't been in his life plans, but here he stood, key in hand, ready to begin renovations on the century-old structure. The basement door creaked open, releasing the musty breath of ages. Thomas flicked on his industrial flashlight, illuminating the stone walls that seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. As an architectural engineer, he knew old houses held secrets, but something about this basement felt different. "Let's see what we're working with," he muttered, scanning the ancient utility systems. His beam caught something unusual, a section of wall that didn't quite match the rest. The stonework pattern broke subtly, forming what appeared to be a perfect circle, roughly 8 feet in diameter. Thomas ran his fingers along the seam, feeling an unexpected warmth emanating from the stone. His aunt had been a renowned archaeologist, but this seemed beyond mere historical artifacts. The wall shouldn't be warm. It definitely shouldn't be humming. He retrieved his thermal imaging camera from his toolkit, a piece of equipment he'd brought to check for leaky pipes. The display showed an impossible heat signature, a perfect oval of energy behind the wall. "What were you hiding, Aunt Eleanor?" After hours of careful excavation, Thomas revealed a metallic surface unlike anything he'd ever encountered. It seemed to absorb and reflect light simultaneously, creating an otherworldly sheen that made his eyes hurt if he looked at it too long. Strange symbols crawled across its surface like living calligraphy, shifting and changing when he wasn't focusing directly on them. His hand trembled as he reached out to touch it. The surface was smooth but seemed to respond to his touch, warming beneath his fingers. A seam appeared where none had existed before, accompanied by a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. Thomas stumbled backward as the pod began to open, revealing a chamber bathed in soft, purple light. Inside, suspended in a crystalline matrix, was a woman, but unlike any human he'd ever seen. Her skin held an opalescent quality, shifting between deep purple and midnight blue. Her hair, floating as if underwater, seemed woven from starlight itself. Her eyes snapped open, revealing irises that swirled like nebulae. The crystalline matrix dissolved, and she fell forward. Thomas rushed to catch her, finding her surprisingly light despite her tall frame. "The beacon," she whispered, her voice carrying harmonics that made the air itself seem to vibrate. "Did it activate? Are they coming?" Her eyes focused on Thomas, confusion crossing her ethereal features. "You're not Eleanor." "Eleanor was my aunt," Thomas managed to say, still supporting the mysterious woman. "She passed away 2 months ago." "I'm Thomas." The woman closed her eyes, a look of profound sadness crossing her face. "Then I have slept too long. The Horizon Seekers will have tracked the others by now." She attempted to stand but stumbled, still weak from her suspended animation. "Easy," Thomas said, helping her to a nearby workbench he'd set up. "I have about 1,000 questions, starting with who you are and why you were in my aunt's basement." "I am Naira," she said, her voice growing stronger. "And your aunt was more than an archaeologist, she was part of a network protecting my people from those who would enslave us. This house," she gestured at the walls around them, "is one of many sanctuaries across your world, hiding refugees from a war your people know nothing about." Thomas looked at the pod, then back at Naira. "My aunt was harboring alien refugees in her basement?" "Not just harboring," Naira said, standing more steadily now. "She was instrumental in developing the stasis technology that kept us hidden. The pods mask our energy signatures from the Horizon Seeker's sensors." She walked to a seemingly solid section of wall and pressed her hand against it. A panel slid aside, revealing a room filled with advanced technology. This was her laboratory. "I think you need to tell me everything," Thomas said, following her into the hidden room. "Starting with why these Horizon Seekers are after your people, and what exactly my aunt got herself involved in." Naira turned to face him, her otherworldly eyes meeting his. Thomas Bennett, what I'm about to tell you will change everything you believe about your world, your aunt, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Are you sure you want to know? Thomas looked back at the pod that had hidden this impossible woman, then at the laboratory his aunt had kept secret for who knew how long. His life as he knew it had already changed irreversibly. Tell me everything. Naira's fingers danced across holographic displays in Eleanor's hidden laboratory, bringing ancient systems back to life. The air hummed with energy as dormant technology awakened after years of silence. Thomas watched, mesmerized by the graceful precision of her movements. Your aunt was brilliant, Naira said, her eyes reflecting the shimmer of data streams. She combined your world's quantum computing theories with our crystalline technology to create something entirely new. The Horizon Seekers never expected their quarry to hide on a primitive world like Earth. About these Horizon Seekers, Thomas said, leaning against a console. You still haven't explained who they are or why they're hunting your people. Naira's movements stilled. They were once like us, explorers, seekers of knowledge. But they discovered something in the dark between galaxies, an ancient technology that corrupted them. They became obsessed with ascending to a higher plane of existence. They believe harvesting the unique energy signature of my species is the key. A three-dimensional star map materialized above them, showing spiral arms of the Milky Way. Red points of light pulsed across it like malignant stars. These are confirmed Horizon Seeker outposts, Naira explained. They're methodically searching this arm of the galaxy. Earth's relative isolation has protected it so far, but, she froze, her eyes widening. No. What is it? Thomas moved closer, noting how her opalescent skin had paled to a ghostly white. They're here. In your solar system. Her hands flew across the controls. A scout ship, already past Mars. Eleanor's detection grid is still functional, but... She looked at Thomas, fear evident in her cosmic eyes. They weren't supposed to reach this sector for another 50 years. How much time do we have? Hours, maybe less. They'll detect the energy signature from my pod's activation. Naira began shutting down systems, her movements now urgent. There are others in stasis, hidden in sanctuaries across your world. If the Seekers find one of us, they'll find all of us. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. What do we need to do? The pod's activation will have sent an automatic alert to other sanctuaries. They'll begin evacuation procedures, but, a warning klaxon cut through the air. Naira's hands blurred across the controls. They're moving faster than I calculated. Thomas, you need to leave. The Seekers will tear this place apart looking for our technology. I'm not leaving you here, Thomas said firmly. Aunt Eleanor protected you for a reason. I'm not going to dishonor her memory by abandoning you now. Naira turned to him, surprise evident on her ethereal features. You don't understand. The Horizon Seekers don't just kill, they unmake. They'll rewrite your very atomic structure trying to extract information about our whereabouts. Then we better make sure they don't catch us. Thomas pulled out his phone, quickly typing. I have a friend who restores classic cars. He's got a garage about an hour from here, off the grid. We can take my truck. Your combustion engine vehicle? For the first time, Naira looked uncertain. The Seekers will be tracking any quantum fluctuations or exotic energy signatures. Exactly, Thomas said, already gathering essential equipment from the lab. Sometimes primitive technology is the best hiding place. But first, help me grab anything from this lab we can't let them find. They worked quickly, methodically destroying what couldn't be moved and packing crucial components into specialized containers Naira pulled from hidden compartments. Thomas tried not to think too hard about the fact that he was handling alien technology that violated everything he thought he knew about physics. A deep vibration began to permeate the air, making Thomas's teeth ache. Naira's head snapped up. They're entering the atmosphere. We need to move now. They rushed up the basement stairs, Thomas carrying 2 heavy cases of equipment while Naira clutched a crystal matrix she said contained vital data. As they emerged into the evening air, the sky above had taken on a strange, shimmering quality, like heat waves on a summer road. My truck's around back, Thomas said, leading the way. We'll take back roads, stay away from populated areas. Naira stopped suddenly, placing her hand on his arm. The touch sent a strange tingling sensation through his body. Thomas, she said softly, why are you helping me? You could walk away, pretend you never found the pod. The Seekers might even spare you. Thomas thought about his aunt, about all the times she'd told him that humanity's greatest strength was its capacity for compassion in the face of the unknown. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I think my aunt saw something worth protecting in your people. I trust her judgment. A small smile curved Naira's lips, making her face even more ethereally beautiful. She said humans would surprise us. I'm beginning to understand what she meant. The humming in the air intensified, and a shadow darker than the gathering dusk began to creep across the land. Come on, Thomas said, taking Naira's hand. Let's show these horizon seekers why they shouldn't underestimate primitive technology. They ran for the truck as the sky continued to darken above them, neither knowing that their journey was about to reshape not just their lives, but the fate of 2 civilizations. The old garage sat nestled in a grove of pine trees, its weathered exterior belying the sophisticated workshop within. Thomas's friend Daniel had always been particular about maintaining a low profile for his restoration business. Now, as Thomas guided his truck down the winding dirt road, he was grateful for that paranoia. Naira sat beside him, her otherworldly features masked by a hoodie and sunglasses. The crystal matrix in her lap pulsed with a faint light that seemed to beat in rhythm with her heart. She hadn't spoken much during the drive, her attention focused on monitoring something through a device that looked like a compact mirror but displayed complex energy patterns. They're scanning in a systematic grid pattern, she said finally, breaking the silence. But they're staying high in the atmosphere. They don't want to be detected by your world's defensive systems. Thomas pulled the truck into the garage's shadows. Dan's not here, he's at a car show in Phoenix. We'll have the place to ourselves. He killed the engine and turned to Naira. What exactly is in that crystal? Naira's fingers traced patterns across the matrix's surface. Everything. The locations of other sanctuaries, the quantum signatures of all my people in stasis, and... She hesitated, the true reason the Horizon Seekers want us so badly. The garage door rumbled shut behind them, and emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a soft blue glow. Thomas helped Naira carry the equipment from the truck into Dan's office. As they set down the cases, a familiar-looking symbol caught his eye. Etched into the corner of Dan's desk was the same spiral pattern he'd seen on the stasis pod. Your friend, Naira said softly, he's part of the network, isn't he? Thomas stared at the symbol, memories clicking into place. Dan and Aunt Eleanor's frequent restoration consultations, the strange deliveries late at night, the times he'd catch them speaking in hushed tones that would stop the moment he entered the room. I had no idea, he murmured. How many humans are involved in this? More than you'd think, fewer than we need. Naira placed the crystal matrix on the desk, and the symbol began to glow. Your aunt wasn't just protecting us, Thomas. She was preparing for what's coming. The crystal projected a holographic display that filled the room with stars. But unlike the previous map, this one showed something massive moving through the galaxy, a wave of darkness that consumed everything in its path. The Horizon Seekers told their followers they found technology that would help them ascend, Naira explained, her voice tight with controlled emotion. What they actually found was a dormant cosmic entity, something that had been sleeping between galaxies for millions of years. They tried to harness its power, but instead, it began to harness them. The hologram zoomed in on the wave of darkness, revealing what looked like ships, but wrong somehow, organic and mechanical merged in ways that defied comprehension. Those they capture are transformed, their consciousness absorbed into a collective driven by the entity's hunger. My people. Naira's voice caught, we can naturally resist the transformation. That's why they hunt us. They believe consuming us will let them maintain their individuality while serving the entity. Thomas watched the horrific display, his mind struggling to process the implications. And Earth? Where do we fit into this? Your aunt discovered something extraordinary about humans. Naira manipulated the crystal, bringing up complex genetic sequences. Your species has potential unlike anything we've seen. Given time to develop naturally, humans might evolve the same resistance my people have, maybe even stronger. Eleanor was working on a way to accelerate that potential. A sound from outside made them both freeze. Through the garage's high windows, a shadow passed, momentarily blocking the moonlight. Naira quickly shut down the hologram. They're searching closer to the ground now, she whispered. The crystal's shielding should hide us, but... The sound of tires on gravel cut her off. Headlights swept across the windows, and a car door slammed. Thomas moved to the office door, peering through the crack. A familiar figure was walking toward the garage. It's Dan, Thomas said. But he's supposed to be in Phoenix. Naira's hand gripped his arm. In the dim light, her eyes swirled with concern. Thomas, if he's part of the network, why would he return now? The evacuation protocol is clear, maintain your cover, don't return to known locations. Before Thomas could respond, they heard the garage's side door open. Dan's footsteps echoed on the concrete floor, accompanied by others, heavier, with a strange metallic quality to them. The inner office, Dan's voice carried clearly. If there's anything to find, it'll be in there. Thomas felt his blood run cold as Naira pulled him away from the door. Her eyes met his in the darkness, and he saw his own horror reflected in their cosmic depths. Dan hadn't come back to help, he'd brought the Horizon Seekers right to them. Thomas and Naira pressed against the back wall of the office as footsteps approached. The crystal matrix dimmed automatically, responding to Naira's mental command. Through the thin walls, they could hear the distinct sound of Dan's voice mixed with something else, a low, mechanical hum that seemed to emanate from his companions. They've already transformed him, Naira breathed, her voice barely audible. The entity works faster than we thought. Thomas scanned the office desperately. There was no other exit, no windows large enough to squeeze through. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied by the sound of equipment being overturned in the main garage. Then his eyes fell on the floor drain in the corner, standard in most garages, but Dan's was different. Thomas had helped install it years ago, remembering how oddly specific Dan had been about its dimensions and placement. The drain, he whispered to Naira. Help me. They moved silently to the corner. The drain cover lifted away easily, revealing not a simple pipe but a narrow tunnel with metal rungs set into its sides. Naira quickly understood, securing the crystal matrix to her back and descending first. Thomas followed, replacing the cover above them just as the office door burst open. The tunnel angled downward sharply, leading them deep underground. Their only light came from the faint glow of Naira's crystal and the bioluminescent strips that lined the walls at intervals, more of the network's hidden infrastructure. Your aunt and Dan prepared escape routes everywhere, Naira explained as they climbed down. But we can't stay in any sanctuary now. If Dan was compromised, others might be too. A sound from above made them freeze, a horrible screeching of metal as something tore through the garage floor. The Seekers had found the tunnel. Thomas could hear what sounded like liquid metal flowing down the shaft. Move! Naira grabbed his hand, pulling him into a horizontal section of the tunnel. They ran through the darkness, their footsteps echoing off the close walls. Behind them, the sound of pursuit grew louder, not footsteps, but the slithering of something that defied natural law. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber filled with abandoned mining equipment. Ancient conveyor belts and rusted ore carts created a maze of obstacles. Thomas recognized where they were, the old silver mine that ran under the hills outside town. "We need to split up," Naira said, pressing the crystal matrix into his hands. "They're tracking my energy signature. I'll lead them away while you—" "Not happening," Thomas cut her off, grabbing her arm. "We stick together." A strange expression crossed Naira's face, surprise mixed with something deeper. But before she could respond, the first of their pursuers entered the chamber. Thomas's mind rebelled at what he saw. It wore Dan's face, but the rest of him was wrong. Flesh and metal merged in impossible ways, his limbs elongated and jointed like an insect's. Behind him came others, former humans transformed into biomechanical horrors. "The entity requires completion," Dan's voice emerged distorted, multiple tones speaking in unison. "Surrender the Stellarborn and embrace ascension." "Over here!" Thomas shouted, drawing their attention while Naira slipped behind a large ore processor. He ducked behind an old generator as something that might have once been a hand punched through the metal where his head had been. Naira's voice rang out from somewhere in the darkness, "Thomas." The crystal pressed the center facet. He found the spot with his fingers as he rolled away from another attack. The crystal pulsed once, and suddenly every piece of metal in the chamber came alive with energy. The transformed humans screamed in unified agony as the energy disrupted whatever technological corruption had consumed them. "Run!" Naira appeared beside him, grabbing his hand. They sprinted for the far tunnel as their pursuers writhed in the energy field. But Thomas caught a glimpse of Dan's face as they passed. For just a moment, his old friend's eyes cleared, showing recognition and horror at what he'd become. The tunnel ahead split into multiple passages. Naira pulled them down one that sloped upward. "This should lead to the surface," she said between breaths. "But they'll recover quickly. The crystal's energy pulse only temporarily disrupts their connection to the entity." "What about Dan? The others? Can they be saved?" Naira's pause told him everything before she spoke. "Once the transformation reaches a certain point, there's no going back." "I'm sorry." They emerged from the tunnel into a moonlit forest. Thomas oriented himself. They were miles from the garage now, deep in the national forest. His truck was long gone, along with any supplies they'd brought. "We need to keep moving," Naira said, scanning the sky. "There will be ships searching for us now. But first—" She turned to Thomas, her ethereal features troubled. "You need to know what's in that crystal. Why Eleanor really brought my people to Earth. Because after what just happened, you deserve to choose if you want to continue this fight." Thomas looked at the crystal matrix in his hands, then at the extraordinary woman before him. In less than 24 hours, his entire world had changed. He'd lost his friend, discovered an interstellar war, and learned that humanity's future hung in the balance. "Tell me everything," he said. "No more secrets." Dawn painted the forest in shades of gold as Naira activated the crystal's final protocol. The holographic display showed Eleanor's face, recorded months before her death. Thomas felt his throat tighten at the sight of his aunt, her eyes bright with the same determination he remembered. "If you're seeing this," Eleanor's image said, "then the worst has happened. The Horizon Seekers have arrived ahead of schedule." She looked directly at Thomas. "Nephew, I'm sorry for keeping so many secrets. But what we discovered was too important to risk." The hologram shifted, showing complex DNA structures. "Naira's people aren't just refugees, they're the key to humanity's evolution. Their genetic structure contains the blueprint for resistance against the cosmic entity. We've been working to merge their DNA with human genetic codes, creating a hybrid that could protect both our species." "The experiments were successful," Naira said softly. But we needed more time. The process has to be voluntary, the integration natural. Forced transformation would make us no better than the Seekers. Eleanor's image continued. The crystal contains everything, our research, the genetic templates, and most importantly, the location of our primary facility. 100 human volunteers are already undergoing the integration process. They're our backup plan, hidden where the Seekers would never think to look, in the deepest part of Earth's oceans. Thomas watched as coordinates appeared, showing a location in the Pacific's Mariana Trench. But that's not all we've hidden down there, is it? He asked, remembering snippets of conversations between Eleanor and Dan about the weapon. Naira shook her head. Your aunt helped us build something. A device that could sever the entity's connection to this galaxy, forcing it back into dormancy. But using it would require someone with both human and stellar-born DNA, a true hybrid. Someone who could channel both energies simultaneously. A distant explosion lit up the pre-dawn sky. Ships were beginning to descend, their organic metallic forms casting horrible shadows across the landscape. They were running out of time. The choice is yours, Thomas, Naira said, her cosmic eyes meeting his. The integration process takes hours, and it's dangerous. Many candidates didn't survive. But if it works, you'd be able to activate the device. You'd save both our peoples. Thomas looked at the crystal, then at the approaching ships. And if we do nothing? The entity will consume your world, transform your people. Earth will become another node in its network of corrupted planets. And my people will be harvested, our resistance used to strengthen its hold. Thunder rolled across the sky, but it wasn't natural. The ships were altering Earth's atmosphere, preparing for mass transformation. Thomas thought of Dan, of the horror in his eyes during that moment of clarity. He thought of his aunt, working in secret for years to give humanity a fighting chance. How do we start? He asked. Naira's relief was visible. She pressed her hand to the crystal, and a hidden compartment opened, revealing a silver vial. Once the integration begins, the Seekers will sense it. We'll have to move fast, get to the ocean facility before they can stop us. Then we better not waste any time. Thomas took the vial. For Earth, for your people, and for Aunt Eleanor. As the sun rose fully above the horizon, Thomas consumed the genetic catalyst. Pain unlike anything he'd ever experienced coursed through his body as his DNA began to rewrite itself. Through the agony, he felt Naira's cool hand in his, anchoring him to consciousness. They had a long journey ahead, across the country to the Pacific, down to the depths where humanity's last hope waited. The Seekers would pursue them every step of the way. But as Thomas's vision began to change, the world taking on new dimensions of color and energy, he knew they had a chance. In his aunt's hidden laboratory, in the depths of a Victorian basement, he discovered not just an alien refugee but humanity's next great leap forward. Now, as his cells transformed and evolved, Thomas Bennett prepared to become something entirely new, a bridge between two species, a weapon against cosmic horror, and perhaps humanity's last hope for survival. Above them, the sky continued to darken with alien ships. But somewhere deep in the Pacific, a weapon waited. And Thomas intended to use it, no matter the cost to himself. The real question was, would he still be human enough to care when the time came? As if reading his thoughts, Naira squeezed his hand. Ready? Thomas stood, his new senses already showing him the path they needed to take. Ready. Let's go save the world.